welcome everybody. Just a business affair. So I just realized that there's actually two Shabbatot, not Shabbatot, two Sunday nights that are Hanukkah, both the first night and the last night. So originally I wanted to go straight through, but I think we'll take one of them off. I haven't decided which one, so you can vote at your leisure. If anybody has, if you don't care, so then don't vote. But if you do care, let me know which one is better for you, or which one, really the opposite, which one is worse. That means that including tonight, there's 4 more shiurim tonight and 3 other ones in December. We're still, even in Israel, we're still November right now, but 3 in December, and then that's it for this series. So thank God we're on schedule, so that's good. And this is a wild story. What I want to do tonight is slightly different. I want to look at the psukim carefully to begin with, but there are some things that are not going to be clear till we see the whole story, and they're still not going to be clear. But what I want you to do is to try to see how different Mefarshim reconstruct the story, specifically Rashi and Ramban. And we'll also be taking a look at what the Chizkuni says, which is a very different, there's a specific issue that the Chizkuni takes issue with. And Sforno to some extent also. So here we are, Pasuk Yud Chet, hope everybody has it, right? V'yeh b'nei Noach, hayotzim min hateva Hashem, v'cham v'yefet, v'cham hu avi Canaan. Okay, so we've had this before, this naming of Noach's sons, right? Here, it's not telling us who Noach's sons are per se. It's telling us who were the main characters, the fathers of households who came off the boat. The order is the same order we've seen it throughout. We all know that there's a pasuk which makes it fairly clear that Yefet is the oldest of the 3, right? And as far as Shem and Ham, so we'll speak about that more later in the shiur, but we saw in the Ramban that Ramban holds that Shem is older and Ham is the youngest, and that's learning in that order will fit in well with the story. It's, as we'll see, it's not 100% clear what Rashi holds. Rashi just told us that Shem is not the oldest, that Yefet is the oldest, but he never told us who was the youngest, whether Ham or Shem, okay? And he still doesn't through the story, and people speculate. There's different Mefarshei Rashi that have different opinions on what Rashi holds. You'll see it's not clear. Now, the big question here, you tell me, what's the big question on this verse? It's not the names Shem, Ham, Yefet, not their order. What's the big question that you have to deal with?
Why is it necessary to name them?
So I don't know. Again, you're right. It could have just said Bnei Noach, but it could have also said the people on the boat. It's interesting that here it's focusing on the new generation. It's not even mentioning Noach per se. So it's true the Torah could have gone without naming them, but I think given the role that, in terms of the context, I think it makes sense to name them. What else strikes you as strange? I mean, again, you know the rest of the story, and you've seen some of you have seen Rashi, but if you hadn't seen Rashi and if you didn't know the rest of the story, what would strike you as strange?
Is it that Ham's lineage is spelled out?
Yeah, that's right. Good. Who said that?
Katya.
Katya, okay, welcome back. Now you're fully back. Okay, Katya was away for a couple of weeks. She had an excuse. She was traveling. So yeah, so why? In other words, um, they're all fathers of children. We're going to see all their children later, right? And again, it's going to be relevant to the story. Canaan is, again, I'm not fooling anyone or spoiler alert here. Canaan is going to have a role in the story, and that's what Rashi is going to say. That's a simple reason. Again, if you didn't know anything, you would ask why is it mentioned that he's Avi Canaan? And Rashi, take a look at Rashi. Why is it necessary to say this here? This was Rashi's question. And he answered the Fisha Parsha Sukkah, Uba, B'shichoto Shel Noach, Shikakel Ba Cham, Ve'al Yedo Nitkakel Kanan, right? So essentially, that, as we said, the story is going to involve Canaan. Noah's going to get drunk, and Cham is going to have some responsibility in what happens after that. And as a result, Canaan is going to be cursed. Continues Rashi, Adain lo katav toladot Cham, right? If you saw in the sources I gave you, right? So I told you to look further in Perik Yud Pasuk Vav. There it spells out the children of Noach, and there are four children, four sons to Ham. Anybody know where Canaan is in the order over there? Anybody take a look at it? Maybe want to guess. Okay, so it's number four. He's number four listed over there. And the default is that means that he's the youngest of the four. Right? Ramban's going to challenge that, but presumably that's the default. In any case, we haven't seen who Ham's children are yet in terms of genealogy, but yet Canaan is going to be relevant to the story. So, right, so that's what Rashi says, Dam Loktav Toladot Ham, Velo Yadanu Shekanan Beno. We don't even know if it just said the name Canaan, we wouldn't know it's his son. Lefikach Utzach Loma, Kan. That's why it needs to say here, Vecham Hu Avi Canaan. Okay. That's Rashi on this verse. Now, can you think of any other reason to mention it? Right? I think you have to be very creative to find. I think what Rashi says makes a lot of sense. It seems like very straightforward pshat, but I saw this Forno saying something else, which I appreciated. I always appreciate when someone can say something different that makes sense. But any thoughts? Why else mention Canaan? No thoughts? Like I said, it's hard because that's what Rashi says seems fairly straightforward. Did anybody get a chance to look at Sforno by any chance? No? Okay, let's take a look at it now. Oh, someone did.
I just looked. I feel like I cheated a little, but I just looked.
Okay, that's fine. So did you figure out what he says? Are you able to read
Yeah,
it?
it wasn't just biological, it was also his spirit, like meaning also his spiritual father, because Canaan was like infamous for wicked behavior.
Right. So let's take a quick look inside. Dome b'drachav leKanan, that Cham is similar in his ways to Canaan. Hamufursamim laroa, that are famous for evil. Right, Canaan is famous for evil, and so what this Sforno is doing is actually the opposite, right, of what Rashi just said. In other words, our point of departure, according to Rashi, is Cham. Cham is the central character, right? And I want to know that he's related, that Canaan is related to him. But for the Sforno, it's the opposite. The Sforno is saying, listen, the Torah wasn't given to Noach. The Torah was given much later. And at that time, Canaan was already a known factor, right? And it was known for its infamy. So therefore, by saying Cham is Avi Canaan, that puts a different spin on who Cham is. Up until this point, before the story, All we know is that it's a son of Noah. The three sons, they could all be the same, right? One could be, better than the others or not, but we don't have any reason to assume that anyone's particularly bad at this point. So it says no, it's foreshadowing. Why did Ham take the role that he did in the story? Because he's Avi Canaan. That's what this forno says. So, like I said, I appreciate that that's a different way of looking at the text, even though I think the simplest reading is, in fact, like Rashi. Okay. Shlosha ele b'nei Noach, u'me'ele nafsa kol aretz. All these three are the sons of Noach, and from these the world spread out. This one might think that there's no need for that, but presumably nafsa kol haaretz, the spreading is what's new here. But okay, in any case, let's go on. Pasuk Chav. V'chal Noach ish adama vita karen. Okay, and Noach began presumably to be a man of the ground, right? And he planted a vineyard, right? So v'yachel, as the Sforno says here, and as other Mefarshim speak about, as the Targum, right? Everybody agrees that it means to begin, right? However, right, it's not clear what is meant by him beginning. When you begin something, and what the something is not clear, right? Presumably that's Rashi's issue here. Why Rashi says something else about v'yachel, right? Why use this word? According to Rashi, that there's a sound that is telling us something else. Right? Take a look at Rashi. V'yachel asatzmo chulin. Right? He made himself profane. Shayal lo lasok tchila b'nitiyah acheret. That he should have first begun to involve himself with a different planting. Now, again, Rashi, if what you notice was Rashi is actually using the word v'yachel both ways. Now, as Rashi is not disputing v'yachel means to begin, because that's what Rashi says, right? If it just meant he made himself profane, then how do we know that he started with this planting as opposed to any other planting? Right? It simply says that, right? He made himself profane and he planted a vineyard. It doesn't say this is the first thing. But Rashi is basing himself on the fact that you can understand that the simple reading is to start. And on top of that, right, there's a nuance by using this word in a funny way that you should look deeper into it, and that there's also hidden in the word chulin. Okay? And it's interesting, right, that Noach made the wrong choice. Now, I don't know. The vine, the vineyard, grapes, wine, all have a special place in our tradition. It's a mixed place. It's dangerous, and yet also is, the only drink, and pretty much, the only drink that you find no, that's not true. You find oil. The only sweet drink, the only drink from Eitzim that you find in the Beit HaMikdash on the altar, right? So on the one hand, if you're going to use it like Noach, then it's really not the place to start, right? But if you use it to bring yourself to joy in a spiritual fashion, or for the sake of service to God, then it can be uplifted. But I guess that in this case, the end shows the original intent, or at least the danger that he didn't take into account, right? Don't forget that in this particular story, it's not clear. The timing is really unclear, right? How far after, right, did he plant, right? Some of the Farshim deal with, what did he eat, right? If all he did was plant a vineyard, vineyards we know, right, don't produce grapes right away, right? And you can't live on grapes, right? So, and how much food did he store, right? So all these are technical questions, but clearly it's not the only thing that was around. And presumably not the first thing he partook of. So some of Farshim, the Rashi points suggests that he took grape branches onto the teva with him because they get drowned under rain, whereas other trees and vegetation does not. Whatever it is, in any case, the story focuses on his planting this and Rashi, following Chazal, censors Noah for not doing the right thing. Tov. Seder. There's an interesting Radak, by the way, that Noach discovered wine, right? I'm not sure if he learns it out of the verse, right? Again, we assume wine, but the fact that you know how to grow grapes doesn't mean you know how to make wine. Okay. At some point, presumably someone found that out, says the Radak, that was Noach. I don't recall what the Radak says, but that brings into question whether he knew that he could get drunk from it, right? In which case that would go against what Rashi says, that, that there was something wrong with planting a vineyard. If all he knew was that you could eat grapes and have grape juice, then presumably there's really no issue there. You could say plant wheat first, I guess, but it's not the same sort of thing as saying he was planting a vineyard in order to make wine, right? So it's interesting Radak with differing implications to the way Rashi wants to learn. Okay, let's go on. Like I said, I want to go through the psukim fairly quickly because I want to go back and try to understand the story once we have all our facts, and our facts are the psukim. Pasuk Chaf Aleph, Vayesh min hayayin v'yishka v'yitgal b'toch ohalo. Okay, Rashi points out ohalo, different spelling, right? Which not really going to go into. I'm just pointing it out. But in any case, it means that he drank from the wine and he got drunk and he was revealed in the midst of his tent. Several Mefarshim point out, betoch, right? It could simply say be'ohel if it meant in the tent. Betoch, like in the Gan Eden, is in the middle, right? Does that have significance or not? Again, depends. You can make it significant if you want. Presumably, it must have some sort of significance, or the Torah wouldn't tell us that. Okay, so what it sounds like is that Noach was drinking and he somehow removed his clothes, right? Chav bet vayar cham avi Canaan. Et arvat aviv yaged l'shnei achiv b'chutz. So Ham's, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father, and he told his two brothers outside. Now, it's very interesting that I haven't seen any Mefarshim, I guess because of the rest of the story, but I haven't seen any Mefarshim that say that at this point Ham has a neutral role, right? That telling his brothers, right? Given the way they dress Noach, there's a need for at least one other person, right? So if he wanted to simply, he saw his father naked and he said, oh, we should cover him up. So I better tell at least one of my two brothers. They were together. So he's told both of them and they took action before he could, right? It's an alternative narrative. But presumably the reason no one says that is because of the continuation of the story. Although we'll see, not according to every reading does that not fit. I think it's a possible reading, even though, like I said, I haven't seen anybody say it. Yeah. Okay. Pasuk Chav Gimel. V'kach Shem vayefet et השמלה וישימו על שכם שניהם וילכו אחרונית ויכסו את ערוות אביהם פניהם אחרונית וערוות אביהם לא ראו. So Yafet, Shem and Yafet took the cloak and they put it on the shoulders of both of them, and they walked backwards and they covered the nakedness of their father, and their faces were backwards, and they did not see the nakedness of their father. Okay, very nice. Now there's a Rashi here, which I think most of you know enough biblical grammar, which sounds at first glance off. Take a quick look. V'yikach Shem v'yefet, en ketiv v'yikchu, ela v'yikach, limed al Shem shnitamet b'mitzvah yoter miyefet. Okay? So Rashi says it should have said v'yikchu, right? The fact that the verb is in singular is to tell you that Shem was more involved. Nitametz, he exerted himself more in the mitzvah. He was the leader, right? Now, why do I question this Rashi?
The same grammatical thing come up other places, and that's not the answer.
Yeah, it's not an answer at all because it happens probably more frequently than not. V'tidaber Miriam ve'Aaron, right? It's if two people are involved in one thing in biblical Hebrew, right? In most cases, the verb is actually singular. So, I want to suggest that Rashi's reason is actually deeper. I mean, I don't know deeper, but different. Why else? What are the other indication is there that Shem is more involved than Yefet? It's an easy question, but you have to nuance your answer. Okay, you don't have to nuance your answer. What's the reason? What's the reason that besides the verb to think that Shem was more involved in Yefet? Sorry, I didn't hear.
Name comes up first.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Who said that?
Me.
Leah.
Leah. Okay, cool. Yeah, so his name comes first. And so this is why I want the nuance. Someone's got to come first. Okay. Why is the default perhaps not that? Why is the default not to have Shem first?
Because he's not the oldest.
Yeah, that's right. That's why. I mean, again, we know that Shem is a bigger tzaddik. That's what Rashi has told us, and that's why he comes. That's traditionally why he's been coming up first each time. But here it might be different, right? Because here, right, someone is going to take on the leadership, right? And it's not really a question of who's more righteous. It's a question of who's going to do it, right? And on some level, when it comes to action among brothers, we would assume if they're both doing something, that the leadership is going to be with the firstborn, right? So perhaps that's why Rashi feels here that the singular verb is pushing us in this direction. Anyways, okay. Tov. V'ikatz chaf dalet. Sorry. V'yaketz Noach meyeno v'yeda et asher asa lo b'no hakaton. Okay, so Noach woke up from his wine, and he knew that which his young son or youngest son had done to him, right? The default was the young son. Was the default? So default is Cham, right? I said we're not sure if Shem or Cham is the youngest, but given the context, right, then it would seem to be Cham. Okay, here comes the surprise, right? And this is the last verse I had you prepare. V'yomer aruch Kanan eved avadim iye le'echav. So he says, cursed is Canaan, right? A slave of slaves he should be to his brothers. Okay, and I said it's a big surprise. Why am I saying that? Why is it a big surprise? Again, you might have seen Rashi. Rashi explains why this is happening, but without Rashi, straightforward, or if you want, according to the Ramban, why is this a surprise? Who deserves the curse? Cham, right? Cham, it seems to be, right? We're not clear on his role, right? Like I said, it's sort of murky. He saw his father naked. He says to his brothers to cover. He doesn't cover him rather. And there's some indication that he did something, right? Assuming B'nai Katon is Cham, it sounds like it's not just that he saw, but it sounds like he actually did something, right? Now, besides locating the curse with Canaan as opposed to Cham, the other thing that Mefarshim try to understand is what did he do? So let's go with the baseline, right? Which I think is what the Ramban is going to say, right? He saw his father naked and he didn't do anything about it. What's the weakness in that approach?
Well, they said he did something, not that he didn't do.
Okay, yeah, fair. So first of all, it says Asher Asa, right? And
What he did was told his brothers, or maybe like ridiculed or something.
Sorry.
Like, that level, what he did was he told his brothers about it. That was an act.
Right. Okay, yeah, fair. Good. Very nice. That was Ita?
Katya.
Okay. Yeah, so you could say there was something active, and that was telling his brothers, which is also not entirely satisfying when you found something that is a positive act. The problem is it doesn't seem to be, of anything that we've seen Cham do, that would seem to be the most positive, right? On the surface. You're right, you could say he did it, laughingly. I think some of the Mefarshim say, I think the Ramban says like that. We'll take a look at the Ramban inside if we have time. So yeah, you're right. But why else is it unsatisfying? At least I find it unsatisfying to say that's all he did. I give you a hint by saying that's all he did.
Is it about his lineage being cursed?
Okay, what do you mean? Go ahead.
That it sounds like maybe too harsh of a curse if
Good. Who's talking?
Katya again.
Gotcha again. Okay, I have you off my screen, so I can't see you. There's Baruch Hashem. More than there you go. Now I see you. Okay. Yeah. So the punishment sounds disproportionate to what he did, right? Besides the fact that what we said before, it's going on the wrong person, so that's one issue. But Noach seems to go ballistic on Ham, right? And even more so on Canaan. What could have happened? And yeah, why is this something that's going to be what's the word? It's going to be channeled in this direction in terms of slavery, right? So there's a bunch of things that lead Chazal to say two things. Rashi brings both. Mefarshim as a whole, you see, as in the Sforno, for example, only brings one of them. So take a look at Rashi on. Let's say from Chavbet, okay? Chavbet from the beginning, Veyar Cham Avi Canaan. So again, same question. Why mention Canaan? What Rashi said before, right? What Sforno said before may work. What Rashi said before at this point would not work, right? In other words, before you told me that I need to be aware that Canaan's going to be involved in the story, and his father is Ham. Okay, now I'm already aware of that. So to repeat it doesn't help for Rashi. So what is it? So he says, Yeshua Rabbeinu Omrim Canaan Ra'a V'Gid La'aviv L'Kach Uskar Al Davar V'Nitkalel. Okay, so some of our rabbis say that Canaan saw, and he's the one told to his father, and that's why he's mentioned about the thing and cursed. Okay, so that helps us with the mention of Canaan here. It doesn't fully help us with why he got cursed and not Ham, right? We'll see that later in Rashi. But let's continue in Rashi. First, V'yar et ervat aviv yesh omrim sirso yesh omrim rava'o. So some say that he castrated him, and others say that he raped him. Okay, so like I said, there's a preference in the Mefarshim for the first as opposed to the second, right? Textually speaking, right? Why do you think that's the case? The Mefarshim prefer that in terms of the text or the context, I should say. Okay, so let's take a look at Rashi further. He's going to fill out for us in Chafhei, right? Here we see it, Avol Kanan. Ata garamta li shelo olid ben revi'i acher l'sham sheni, right? You caused that I should not be able to procreate and have a fourth son in order to serve me. So aror bincha revi'i liot meshamesh et zaram shel elu agdolim. Right, so says Rashi, so your fourth son is going to therefore serve the other three's offspring, right, who are bigger. Because now instead of the fourth son who's going to be taking care of me, the trouble of taking care of me is now on all the other three, on Shem, Ham, and Yefet. Umara Ham. So you see Rashi also, by the way, Rashi's preference is for castration. Again, for this reason, because it makes a very beautiful poetic justice, very much midah keneged midah. Umara Ham shesil. So why did Ham do this? What was his point? Amalachem la'achiv adam rishon shnei banim hayu lo. והרג זה את זה, בשביל ירושת העולם, ואבינו יש לו גימל בנים, עודנו מבקש בן רביעי. Right, interesting, right? Not what we necessarily expect, right? Cham says, more brothers is more trouble, right? There was trouble with Adam's two sons, right? They fought each other for the inheritance, which, by the way, is a very interesting point, right? The idea of zero-sum games, that anytime you have a zero-sum game, there is a natural adversity. It doesn't matter if you're brothers or friends or whatever it is. Once you have a limited quantity of something, right, what you gain, I lose, right? So there's a naturally adversarial relationship. Okay, so says Cham that two is bad, 3 is worse, and 4 is even worse than that. The more people involved, the worse it is. The more parties involved, the worse it is. Okay, so but in any case, that's more of an aside. The main part of Rashi is the part before that, which again sort of puts all the pieces together in order to make the curse on Canaan make sense, in spite of the fact that the person that did the main action is Ham, right? So you notice at the very beginning, Rashi hedged about Canaan having any involvement altogether. He says, Yesh miraboteinu omrim, some say. But here, regardless of whether Canaan had involvement or not, right? So this is the fourth son versus Noach's not having a fourth son, and the fourth son would have naturally been a ben Skunim, right? Like Binyamin, right? Yosef and then Binyamin for Yaakov, who would have served him, and therefore Ham owes Noach's service. And that service is going to come through his fourth son, right? If we go, by the way, with Rashi, and the simple reading of Canaan as being the fourth son, that means one of two things. Either Noach's children had children already when they got on the boat, even though we didn't hear about them. It's one possibility. Second possibility is this doesn't occur right after they're getting off the boat, but rather quite a few years later. Okay, and the Torah does not tell us right when this transpires. It says that it began with planting a vineyard, but it's not clear that necessarily is right after they're leaving the boat. Okay, okay. So I want to take you through now the Chizkuni shortly, and then I want to try to go through the Ramban inside. So who else could Beno HaKatan be besides Cham? Right? Noach saw what his young son did. Right? Which pasuk is that? Pasuk. Right, Pasuk Chavdaled, right? He woke up and he saw what his youngest son had done, and he got angry and said, right, Arur Kanan, Eved Avadim, Lechav. Right? Is there any other possibility? Who else could it be? Sorry?
Not
It could be, right. So Canaan, what's the advantage of saying it's Canaan?
that it taught it. He's the youngest of Ham's.
Okay, so that's one advantage, but an even bigger advantage over there. There's an issue we didn't discuss.
Into what was done to him.
Sorry?
Actually ties into what was done.
I still didn't hear you.
It ties Canaan to what was done to Noah.
Yeah, say it better.
Um, like in a way it proves that he was there and involved, and it's not just Rashi saying that Kanan did it.
What shows that he was
That the
involved?
pasuk says, "Ma asher salo bno hakatan."
No, because we don't know who Bnei Katan is.
Right.
There's a problem we had with Ham that this gets rid of. We didn't speak it out fully, right? Probably because Rashi sort of tied it nicely for us as midah keneged midah, as poetic justice. But there's a big problem in saying. So before we go to Canaan, there's a big problem in saying Bnei Katan is Ham, right? What's the big problem that disappears when you say it's Canaan? Who does Noach curse? Canaan, right? So, right? It's like the Gemara has an expression like this, like, X, hits you and you punch Y in the face, right? This is what it seems like, right? Ham does the sin and Noach punches Canaan in the face, right? If you say B'nai Katan is Canaan, and you get rid of that problem, right? Then Canaan does the bad thing, and he punches Canaan in the face, right? So that's good. That's okay. What's the weakness? What's the weakness with this approach?
He's not one of his actual sons, he's a grandson.
That's right. Good. Yafeh. Okay. And Sforno is aware of that. Sforno, who wants to say that Ben Beno is that it is Canaan who was involved. It's very interesting. If you took a look at I don't read it inside because I still want to try to get to the Ramban, but in Chavbet, so it's very interesting. Shituf Pula, how do you say Shituf Pula? Cooperation between Ham and Canaan, right? According to Rashi, the major player was Ham, right? Canaan just sort of saw it, maybe saw it, and he told his father, and Ham did the dirty work. According to Sforno, it's just the opposite, right? Sforno motivated for the reasons we just said. Canaan gets cursed, so Canaan did the major action, but Ham is not let scot-free, right? After all, Sforno was the one that said that Ham is introduced as the father of Canaan to show us that Ham is really a bad guy also. What was Ham's badness? That he saw, right? After all, he's still on the scene. He tells his two brothers, go cover father, or father's naked, whatever, right? So the Sforno says Ham's sin was that he didn't protest against his son, Canaan. But Canaan did the action. What about the fact that it says Beno, as Barry said, right? It's his son. It's not his son. So take a look at Sforno on Chav Dalid, Beno Katan, Bnei Banim Harahem Kebanim, right? So he says that the grandchildren are considered like sons. And we know this is not outrageous because we see, just like the word ach, not to the same extent, but just like the word ach, brother, is not literally always a brother. So too, the word ben is not always literally a son. Okay, so that's how the Sforno gets out of that problem. Okay, third possibility, and that's the Chizkuni. Who else could Beno HaKatan be? There's not a lot of choices left, right? Couldn't be Batman, Superman. No.
Shame.
Shem. Okay, good. So here we have a really big problem, right? What's the big problem in saying it's Shem?
Is it the same problem, sort of, that it goes straight into the curses?
Yeah, right. So yeah, so spell that out. Go ahead.
It says when Noach woke up from his wine and learned what his son had done to him, he said, "Cursed be Canaan." So like it would logically follow that he saw like something bad that had happened to him, and Shem did something good for him.
Right, good, Yefet. Okay, so right, cursing Ham's son for right something that Shem had done. So in fact, I mean, I don't know if you already saw the Chizkuni, but the Chizkuni points out that we're making an assumption about the relationship between Chaf Dalet and Chaf Hey, right? And so I think it's a good assumption that the curse in Chaf Hey is a result of what happened in Chaf Dalet, right? But the Chizkuni says that we should read it inside. It's a short Chizkuni. He says, so what did he remember about his small son being Shem? Hatova asher asalo beno hakatan, ulchak balcho yoter me'agadol. Right, he remembered the good that Shem had done for him. Right, that he led the putting on the clothes, and therefore he gave him a bigger blessing than Yefet. The weakness also is that the curse comes first. According to that, the blessing should have come first on Shem, and then Yefet, and then he should have gone to the curse after that. Okay, so it's a fascinating reading, but I think it's a difficult reading. So I think the best candidates are going to be that it's either Ham or Canaan. Okay, so we have enough. We have 12 minutes left, and I think that gives us enough time to read the Ramban inside. Third perspective, the Ramban, as you know, is critical of Rashi for being too much of a darshan. The Ramban is much more a stickler for pshat, and so he's going to learn differently than Rashi. He attacks the Even Ezra, who takes the approach of the Sforno. I mean, really, Sforno takes the approach of the Even Ezra, Sforno coming afterwards. Okay, take a look at the Ramban. On Yud Chet. Okay. Yeah, okay. V'cham hu avikanan. Pirush Rashi. Lefi שהפרשה עסוקה ובא במשפחתו של נוח שקלקל בה חם בעידון לקלקנן ועדיין לא כתב תולדותיהם, וצריך לומר שחם הוא אבי כנען. Okay, fine. Just quoting Rashi. So far we saw that Rashi. Rabbi Avraham, Ibn Ezra, right? Amar ki cham ra'a ve'gid le'achiv, right? So far, just like Rashi, right? That Cham went and told his brothers. V'knan asalo ra'a. That's like we saw in the Sforno, that Cham just told his brothers while he was telling his brothers. So Canaan actually did the castration. Lo galauto akatuv, and the verse doesn't tell us what it is, right? It's to hide it, because it's really nasty. Vezetam et asher asalo b'no aktan. That's the meaning of what his young son had done to him. Again, like we saw in Sforno. Kikanan hu akatan lecham kasher yimne otam. Since Canaan is the youngest of Cham's children, right? So b'no aktan would be, according to Ibn Ezra's reading, it's not Noach's youngest son, it's in fact Cham's youngest son. I just want to take a look at something. Yeah. Okay. As they're counted, right? That's the verse that I told you about in the next parak Yud Pasuk Vav, right? Ubnecham Kush Mitzrayim Fut Ukanan, right? Yud Vav. Okay. והנה עזב רבי אברהם דרכו בפשוטה המקרא והחל להנבא שקרים. So the Ramban uses very harsh words against the Ibn Ezra. He says that Rabbi Avraham lost his way in focusing on the simple reading of the text, and started prophesying lies, right? Meaning that he doesn't like the idea that Canaan would be the one who did something, because he's not Beno Katan. He's not his youngest son, and we don't read anything about him doing anything like Chazal said, which Rashi quoted, right? You know, the Ramban is saying, fine, I know the Midrashim, I know about the castration, but that's not Pshat, right? And as far as the Even Ezra, right, it's bad enough to take the Midrashim as Pshat, but as far as the Even Ezra, who told him to change Beno Katan and make it Ben Beno, right? Okay, so our group knows why he would do that. Even so, says the Ramban, that's not the simple reading. I'm surprised at him. V'nachon be'enai. So what is the pshat? So Ramban tells you, ki hamu akatan lenoach. The simplest reading. That's what we started with, which is Rashi. That the Beno Katan that being talked about is in fact Ham, who is his youngest son. Kasher pirashti berosh haseder, like I explained at the beginning of the parsha. V'knan hu ben agdola lecham. Okay, so this is very interesting, right? Remember we said we didn't know the timing of the story, but the default is it should be pretty close after they left the boat, right? Ideally no more than a couple years, and preferably we'd like it to be even closer. In any case, says the Ramban, so Canaan is the oldest child of Ham. Okay, so the reason he's saying that again is because not a lot of time has elapsed, right? For Ham to have 4 children already is a lot, right? So I'd rather it be the first child. There's not a lot of grandchildren. It could be there's only one grandchild, and he would be Canaan. But then the obvious question of the Ramban is, right, our default is that they're in numerical order. I mean, the oldest child goes first. That's the way genealogies work. The fact that Shem and Ham and Yafet were different, we said that's a very big exception because of Shem. Shem's an outstanding character, and that's a big exception. But as far as Ham's 4 children, it's hard to imagine there's an exception. So it says no. Says the Ramban, no, there is a reason for the exception here. Lekol achav ma'ala alav. Says the Ramban, when do we have this genealogy? After this story, right? So once he was sold, meaning he was cursed to be a slave of slaves, so he had to give all of his brothers priority, okay? So the okasheira ma'aseh hazeh leNoach lo yacham zera zulati Canaan. And when the story happened, right, so Canaan was Ham's only child. Now, there's another big reason why the Ramban wants to say this, right? I mentioned in terms of the time interval, but ultimately, like I said before, the Torah doesn't tell us when this story takes place. So why is Ramban so insistent to make Canaan the oldest child and the only child? Right? He's doing this to answer a really strong question that becomes stronger according to his approach. Okay, let's just review his approach up till now. Okay, so what do we have? We have Noach getting drunk, right, and taking his clothes off, and we have Ham, right, seeing this take place and not doing anything about it. And we'll see snickering to his brothers, right? Although don't have to say that, but doing something that's negative in the process of the story, right? The brothers cover Noach. Noach realizes what Ham, according to Ramban, what Ham has done to him, and he curses Canaan, right? So why does the Ramban say the Canaan is Ham's only son at this point?
He had more kids, then wouldn't more of his kids be cursed? Why just Canaan?
Good, Yafeh, excellent, right? Did Canaan do anything according to Ramban? Zero, zilch, right? Now, Ramban could have gone with Rashi's poetic justice, right? He could have gone that road, but he feels that it's better, in spite of the fact that he has to play with the lineage later on. Okay, so he's trying to give us a reason why curse Canaan. Okay, so the answer is, according to him, he's Canaan's only child. But then, and he's going to answer the follow-up question. The follow-up question is, okay, fine, but why not curse Ham, right? Okay. Again, Canaan's innocent. He didn't do anything. So why, and Ham did. Okay. So take a look. Zotam via Ham avi Canaan, ki ein lo ben acher. And this is the reason why he's mentioned as the father of Canaan, because he didn't have another child. Kasher chatal aviv kilal zaro. And when he sinned, meaning Ham sinned against his father, so Noach cursed his offspring. Ve'im amar Ham eved avadim yeh, right? So why not just curse Ham? Lo yazik rak legufo. So it would only, if you cursed, it's interesting that according to Ramban, there seems to be a limited amount of curses you can give, right? Which is a very strange thing. I'm not sure how to answer that in the Ramban. But the Ramban seems to think that you have a choice of one or the other. And if you give it to Ham, right, it's only going to hurt him, right? Meaning him and subsequent children, but not any child who already is around. And that's especially troubling in the case that this would be his only son. Kim yodem acharav, who knows what will be afterwards. Alken kilel haben shayalo, that's why he cursed the son who he had. Ve'im yolam mea dai shekulal beno habachol v'kol zaro ito. And even if he would have another 100 children, at least he knows he's got one, right? Strange Ramban, quite frankly, right? When you have a Ramban like this, it means the text is very difficult, because that to me seems very weak. Yeah. Anyways, so as far as what was the sin that Ham did, he saw the naked, and he should have covered it up right away, right? Granted, like we said before, you need two people to do it in the most sanua way, right? But so the Ramban, take care of it. Don't play around. Don't play games. Don't be a big tzaddik. Just cover it up. Shelo yagidenu gam lachav, without telling his brothers. Vehu yagid davar shnei achav b'fnei rabim v'ligalab. Says the Ramban, but he rather told it to his brothers in front of other people to make fun of Noach. Visit tam bechutz. Says the Ramban. That's why it says bechutz, right? Which is perhaps a reasonable thing to say, because otherwise bechutz is extra. And a proof for that is that the Targum translates the word bechutz as bashuk. They were in the marketplace. He didn't wait. He didn't tell them quietly. And so what was the real sin, says the Ramban? That he told all sorts of people about it. He revealed the behaviors of all sorts of people. As a result, Noach was very embarrassed. Says the Ramban, the rabbis added an additional sin, meaning it's not pshat. What the rabbi said, what Rashi says in others. Okay. Who do you like best? Ramban, Sforno, Rashi.
People are there to tell?
Sorry, what?
What shuk is there? What people are there?
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point, right? So again, part of that depends on the timing, right? But you're right, it's a good point. How many people are going to be in the shuk? Like, even assuming it's 20 years past, right? There's a couple relatives, a couple cousins. Yeah, it's a good point. Wives, I guess. I assume that's what it means. Beshuka doesn't, obviously it's not necessarily a literal marketplace of ideas, right? They're going around talking and schmoozing, and comes along Ham with a juicy story. That's
Also,
good.
I don't get if it was a castration, what's the point of Han telling his brothers like you just did this like horrible thing, now you is it bragging
Well,
or
no, don't forget the Ramban doesn't hold like that.
right, right. Yeah, right. But going back to that opinion, like what was the telling
Yeah, so again,
like you
you'd
want
have
to cover it up or something yourself? I don't know.
right. So I, I, I'm not sure if anybody combines the two things. Maybe this one I'd have to think, but um, I think the simple reading would be, according to the other approaches, not the Ramban, is that he did this and he didn't tell them what he did. He said he's naked, it's terrible, he's naked. And then, at this point, Noach is drunk. He can't tell them what happened. They may see a lot of blood around, but what a mess. There's vomit, there's blood. It's like it's geferlach. Um, but they don't necessarily know what happens, and it's not even clear that the Noach tells them. Right? He knows what happened. He curses Canaan, right, as a result. So I think according to Rashi, Cham is not necessarily trying to, make sport. He's just trying to, it's sort of almost like an alibi, right? That what I did it, I told you to cover him. So I didn't do this. Maybe. Again, there's not too many other suspects. Maybe it was Canaan. It was Canaan. That's why Canaan got cursed. Okay, ladies. Thank you very much. B'ezras Hashem, we'll meet regular next week. And like I said, we'll either skip 2 weeks' time or 3 weeks' time. So if you have an opinion, please let me know. Take
Rabbi.
care. Bye bye. Shabbat tov. Shabbat tov.
Thank you.
But,